Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Brittany Martin with the American Marketing Association. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. Our sponsor for this webinar is Looker. We have two amazing speakers, Joel and Marcel. But before we get started, I just want to point out a couple things. Go ahead and test out your chat boxes by letting us know what locations you're from. I see a couple good locations coming in right now. Also, if you have any specific questions for our presenters, you can type that into the questions and answers tab. Also, this presentation will be available on demand once we conclude. But otherwise, let's go ahead and get started with our two presenters today.
Thank you so much, Brittany. We really appreciate it. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this presentation on the evolution of digital marketing. We're going to be talking not just about digital marketing and how it's evolved from an analytics perspective, but also the power of predictive analytics. So we should have a really good set of topics here for you. We're going to cover it from an introductory perspective, go a little bit deeper. So again, if you have any questions, just throw them in that question and answers part of the interface, and we'd be happy to get to them towards the end of the session today. My name is Joel McKelvey. I'm the Director of Product Marketing here at Looker, and I'm very excited to be joined by Marcel, one of our data analysts. He's got a lot of experience in this space, and particularly around AI, data science, and predictive analytics. So he's going to add a little bit of technical depth to what we're doing today, and he'll be joining us to talk about digital marketing and predictive analytics and how those two things can come together in just a few minutes as we get started. So I'm really excited to be here as a part of an advanced marketing presentation or advanced marketing analytics presentation, because things have really changed since I first started doing marketing a number of years ago. The reality is we began in a space where we were doing the bulk of our marketing offline. Maybe I'm showing my age there. And now we've moved very heavily into a digital marketing space. But a lot of us, myself included, still are very focused on what I would say the first phase or the first generation of digital marketing. And that's rightly so. This is a tactical level of marketing, a type of marketing that we all need to be optimizing and analyzing. It's a thing we do every day. And these are simple things like making sure that our digital ad work is as efficient as possible. Am I paying for AdWords? Are those AdWords working for me? Or are they not? How do I quickly and effectively kill off AdWord campaigns that aren't being successful? How do I quickly and effectively tune it or add more AdWords when I see that there's a particular topic or area of interest that I want to go after, and automating that process? Maybe you're also using something like DoubleClick to combine some of the digital information you're getting, like impressions or click-through rate, to help you track. Or maybe you're working in a video space with something like YouTube, and you're looking at what videos are being viewed, how long are they being viewed for, where do they drop off of those videos, how impactful is it, what does that advertising look like? These are all very specific tactical goals, and of course, as our day-to-day operations as marketing people, we must focus on and optimize them. There are a number of ways to do that. And in most cases, those ways, if you're looking at Facebook ads, you can go into your Facebook ads interface and look at that. If you're looking at Google ads, you can go into your Google ads interface and look at that. If you're paying one of these digital advertising vendors for the opportunity to advertise on their platform, normally they have a specific interface where you can look at its success and efficacy. That is great. Here's an example of a DoubleClick for Publishers interface. This interface is actually in Looker, but it's one set of data, and it's talking about impressions leading to clicks, leading to click-throughs, leading to revenue. And really, this is at the core of someone who's trying to sell online, any e-commerce or retailer. Are we actually getting revenue from the other side as we go through impressions and clicks? Because we pay for impressions, we pay for clicks. We don't necessarily pay for the ones that close as revenue. So it's really important for us to optimize this. But this is just one view of what we're doing. When we want to combine how do impressions or clicks work, oftentimes we have to manually combine a data source that's got some set of impressions data. You can see this from 2013 and 2014 down the left-hand side here. So we have impressions data, we have clicks data. They're on different scales, of course, but you can see that they're tracking together. But in some places, they diverge pretty widely. And in order to know that there's a divergence between impressions and clicks, or impressions and click-throughs, or clicks and revenue, historically, we go and we manually combine these two things. And I talk about that as though that was a million years ago, but if you're anything like me, you're very much an Excel person in your mind, or you might be doing a lot of data in Excel, and you would not be alone. Absolutely not. Because the vast majority of people are doing this type of manual combining of data sources in a very ad hoc, one-off manner. And if you listen to Forrester Research, about 66, that's 2/3 of companies, 66% of companies are still using Excel for the majority of their business intelligence or the majority of their analytics. And as marketing people, that's the case for us too. We're still very ad hoc, one-off. And there's some analytic solutions out there which are sort of like super Excel, still run on a desktop, still run in sort of a workbook type of a manner. And you can absolutely do better analytics there, better visualization there, better reporting there to get better insights into your ad spend or your impressions. But because they're still in that workbook analytics space, there's still that sort of reporting dashboard driven, simple data in space. They're still very limited in what you can do. And if we're trying to do the hard parts, the non-tactical, the more strategic components of marketing, we need to get a better view into how that marketing works. And that requires a lot of different types of data. In order to get, for example, a good view into Google's digital marketing, if you've got AdWords and DoubleClick in YouTube, right, you might go into a Google 360 analytics tool that's going to combine those data sets. So you can combine multiple data sets and find out, are the ads driving impressions, which drive clicks, which drive revenue? Are the videos causing people to come to the site and click through? Those types of pieces of data are really what's necessary to justify some of the spend in video content creation, better ad creation work, AdWord purchase, website redesign. So some of these more strategic, larger, longer-term activities simply require the combination of multiple data sets. Now, I think Google's done a pretty good job of getting those things inside Google's purview together in one place so that you can analyze them. But Google isn't the end-all, be-all in a digital marketing space, right? They do own a significant amount of asset there. But what happens if you want to start adding in more complementary data? So certainly you can use some of Google stuff and add in Salesforce data. But I think it's really important to note the volume and diversity of data that we as marketers are beginning to start needing and beginning to start utilizing in order to make these strategic decisions. So I have 4 on this slide, and 4 really is not enough to get there. What if you've got Marketo data? What if you've got Facebook ads data and LinkedIn ads data? What if you've got a bunch of other pieces of data, or you've got a number of SaaS applications you're using, so you're trying to link in some form of secondary form of CRM, or Zendesk ticketing data, or any one of a number of different types of sources of data. Those really can make a difference in the customer experience and how you track them, and therefore how we market to our audience. I don't know if any of you can make any guesses as to how many individual data sources or SaaS product the average enterprise company might have. But Gartner says it's somewhere between several hundred and several thousand sources per company. And that gives you an idea on how integration with complementary data, how important that is, and how big a task it is to do that if you're not looking at it from a comprehensive overview. If you're trying to do it one-off in an Excel or similar workbook analytics environment, it's very quickly going to overwhelm you. And the reason we need this data is to get us to that next step, right? What's missing when we're looking at tactically, did my AdWords work well? Are people watching my YouTube video type of an approach? And we really need to look beyond those tactical spaces into the strategy to find really important pieces of information, like which campaigns result not just in revenue, but in highest customer support requirements. Are we causing costs in the rest of the environment by running campaigns which make our support organization work harder? What campaigns result in the most feature requests, right? So if you're interfacing with Jira data, for example, and you're tracking bugs or feature requests, that's really important to tie that data into the campaign. Just as if you're looking at customer support requirements, it might be tying in Zendesk data. What campaigns result in customers the highest renewal rates? So you'll want your sales data in there, you'll want your renewal data in there, you'll want your campaign data as well, and you want a comprehensive view of those campaigns. How does the effectiveness of ad spend compare to, I mentioned this earlier, LinkedIn data, Bing ads if you're still using them, Facebook ads. There's a lot of platforms you could be doing your ad spend on. How is the effectiveness of Google Ads going to compare to those? So these are all those higher level questions that you might be asking. And you might go even further. What is my customer lifetime value? How much does my acquisition cost per customer? How can I bring that down while increasing lifetime value? These are major strategic questions the company needs to ask where marketing has a significant impact, and analyzing them can be challenging. And that is why we're increasingly moving towards this realm of predictive analytics. So philosophically, what I would say is that data we are collecting as marketing teams is very rapidly approaching too much data to analyze. It's becoming so big, it's this machine scale data, that an individual human simply can't deal with it. Predictive analytics is a very powerful tool we can use to take the data that we have from a machine scale, big data environment and distill it down into a data set which humans can analyze, can work with, and can make very good, solid decisions with. But still, our challenge will continue to get bigger. So I don't want to startle anybody, right? But IDC in their Futurescape presentation says we're going to get 500 million new business apps between 2018 and 2023. So our problem will only get bigger, right? How do we accept, use, and consume those data points as we go forward? And it's really important that we do combine these data from different sources. So I want to give you an example of where I've worked in my previous roles on just one thing that required the combination of large amounts of data to get us there. I was working on selling a product in a B2B environment that was approximately 33 or a third of the business for my previous company. It was a huge amount of our revenue. And while the company was growing very, very rapidly, that revenue was not growing as rapidly. And several years on, it was only about 7% of our business. So it had dropped to under 10% of our business from roughly a third. A huge drop in the percentage of revenue for the company. And one day, my boss, the CMO, came to me and said, why are we continuing to market this product? It's clearly a declining part of our revenue. It's clearly something we don't necessarily care all that much about. You're still spending a third of your time on it, marketing it out to the world, but it's only 7% of our revenue. I can't justify continuing spend on that. So I unfortunately didn't have a nice analytics tool like, say, Looker or one of the modern analytics platforms. So it took me about 3 months digging up Salesforce data, revenue data, renewals data, talking to our support team, and manually going around and just surveying all the people that I need to get the data for in order to put together a proposal as to why. And it turns out that 7% of our business was the first entry in a buying process for more than 40% of our customers. So it was their absolute first purchase for almost half of our revenue. In and of itself, it was a very small part of our revenue. But it's this Trojan horse. It's that land and expand, and it was absolutely where the company was landing and expanding into much more business. And I could not have found that data and made the justification to continue to support marketing that product without combining a lot of different data sets that are beyond just the marketing data set. Actually, we ended up expanding marketing on that product to about 50% of our marketing spend because it was absolutely a revenue driver, and we were able to tie in or attribute add-on sales to this small part of our revenue. Very, very powerful message around why combining data from multiple sources, one of these 500 million news sources, could very well get you that piece of strategic insight that you need in order to do a better job marketing. Now, Looker is really uniquely designed, just to give you a few moments on us, is really uniquely designed to handle data from a lot of sources. We have instantiated in Looker blocks of analytics that describe how to deal with a particular data source. We have an AdWords block. We have a Facebook data block, et cetera, that describe that data. And by using that block, you can very, very quickly model the data, add it into Looker, and make analysis available to anybody in your marketing department. So data sources with Looker blocks are a very fast way to ramp up on all those new data sources you might need as a marketer and make sure that they're in your marketing data exploration environment so that you can very quickly get to them. That is not the norm, right? But it's very, very quick. The other exciting thing about a block is that you don't necessarily have to be the one who writes it. We have blocks it cost nothing. You can get them right online. And once one is written, you can just grab it and use it at any time if you're a Looker customer. So that's fantastic. I will point out that things like the Google AdWords block were written by Google. So they are actually written by people who have deep, in-depth knowledge of the analytics associated with the data set. And they just really help you handle data sources quickly and effectively and scale well. Once you have a block for that data source, you're essentially done. And you can go on to the next data source. It helps you scale your data team very, very heavily as well. And you can customize them as necessary. They're instantiated as code, so if you want to change one, tweak it a little bit, you can always do that and share it with others as well. So when you combine all those data sets, one of the easiest case studies that you see in a number of our customers around Blue Apron or CareZone or Hearst or BuzzFeed or whomever is combining ad spend to make strategic decisions against all the ads you're doing, right? So this is taking it from that tactical, did this Google AdWord work, to where am I spending on advertising? And we have that classic early 19th century story about we are wasting half of our advertising budget, but we're not sure which half. This will help you identify, how do I optimize ad spend? How do I make that as powerful and as effective as possible? And that's this ability to combine those data sources in Looker. That's exactly what's happening. But we've taken it even a step further with Looker as well. We have all these blocks that work with these different types of ads. And now what we've developed is a whole interface associated with digital marketing called our Digital Marketing Analytics application. I definitely recommend you take a look at that if you have a chance or you're interested. It's something that is very, very powerful and can make a considerable difference if you're doing something like ad optimization from an analytics perspective. I mean, so that's a lot about Looker, but really I think the point here is that you've got a ton of company data that as a marketer makes a big difference for you. Some of it is obviously marketing data like advertising data, Marketo data. Some of it is less obviously something that you need, like access into Zendesk or connecting to Jira or GitHub. These are things that are more about your product, or more about product development, but can really bring a lot to your marketing analytics. And things like Salesforce, your CRM tools as well, can make a big difference. So I definitely recommend combining a lot of data sets and sharing those so that you can get out what you need to do. One last thing about us as Looker that makes us powerful is this concept of connecting that data in. You can actually schedule alerts based on data change, but you can do things inside Looker which you might not be able to do somewhere else, like right from within Looker send an email to a customer with a discount code once you've identified them. Used analytics to identify that they're a customer who might be abandoning their cart 4 or 5 times over the course of that day. You could send them an email or a text through one of these connected platforms very quickly and seamlessly with a discount code that'll cause them to go back in and and pick back up that shopping cart and close that transaction. So that idea of taking action on that data through those connected platforms and reaching out directly to your customers is very powerful. You can also use a looker action around Jira, for example. If you see a lot of customers who are frustrated or having challenges with parts of your product, you can enter a bug ticket in Jira and send that to your product team, things of that nature. So combining all those data sets and being able to put it right into connected platforms, right into connected workflows is what makes Looker really powerful. Now, I want to take a breath there and focus this back to let Marcel have a chance to talk, because I think part of the challenge we have with all these data sets is, how do I scientifically approach it? How do I predictively approach it? And how do I deal with data at a volume which is really beyond my ability to handle as a human being? So with that, Marcel, maybe you could give us a little bit about how data science works in digital marketing in this new world with so many data sets.
Perfect. Thank you, Joel. And yeah, definitely want to dive into everything here. It's really interesting to see some of the parallels between the issues that data scientists are seeing as well as business analysts, and getting the data being a huge part of that. So before I dive in to talk about how you can kind of up-level your data science workflows, I just want to start off with talking about what the traditional data science workflow looks like. And for any of you in the audience that have done this before, this should be probably very familiar. But just at a high level, there's really three pieces that go into a data science workflow from a high level. The first part is getting the data. Exactly that same kind of motion that Joel was talking about before. It took 3 months to get data from one place to the next and connect those pieces and connect the dots. A lot of it might live in a database. Some of it might just live in Excel spreadsheets. Some of it might just be locked up in various apps like Marketo or Salesforce or wherever it might be. And once that is all brought together, maybe they're using some code to piece things together, or they're just piecing it together, again, in Excel, which is the most common way to do this. Then comes the actual interesting part, the actual data science part. So we move on to the next section there. Most common tools here are Python or R, where this is where kind of the bread and butter of the data scientist comes into play. Usually they're running logistic regressions or some other machine learning algorithm, but this is the part that they enjoy. This is what they were hired for, whether this is a PhD in statistics or just somebody who studied this in school. This is the part that they're prepared for coming into the job. And then, of course, the last part is getting this information out to the people that need it. And this can be anything from making a custom application to just sending emails. It really depends on the specific use case that is being made. So this varies widely. Now, the real question is, what does this look like from a time perspective for each of these steps? And as it turns out, it usually looks like this kind of breakdown. About 80% of the time of the data scientist is spent just wrangling that data. Only about 20% is then used for actually fine-tuning the machine learning algorithms to get good predictions to come out of there. And now the last section I left as a question mark. Well, that's because sometimes this just never occurs. So much time was spent getting the data ready and getting that predictive algorithm to work that by the time the answers or predictions are coming out, it might not be relevant anymore. Or it's just too big of a lift of an effort to make sure that that gets into the hands of the end users in a timely fashion. So oftentimes it just becomes this kind of science project that was done. Other data scientists are looking at it, they find it interesting. Occasionally the data scientist might be called upon as a consultant before some kind of marketing effort goes out to make sure it makes sense with that data science project that was done maybe 2-3 months ago. It's really hard to say how that ends up getting used, especially at smaller organizations that don't have that lift, that power to actually quickly iterate on and create some kind of application to get this information out there. And the reason why that 80%, that first section is taking so long, of course, is because if you don't get that right, it doesn't matter how sophisticated your machine learning algorithm is, it's garbage in, garbage out. So you have to make sure that the data that's coming in is precise, it's accurate, it's up to date, and you want to make sure that you're not misinterpreting it. So oftentimes data scientists who might not have that subject matter expertise are spending a lot of time also just working with people that might have already created good metrics in their own Excel spreadsheets or their own tools, whatever they're using, that could be predictive, but the data scientist doesn't necessarily have access to that. It's incredible how much work is being duplicated in a lot of organizations just because the data scientists don't have access to the same tools that the marketing team might have. So this is where bringing in kind of Looker as one example, but also in combination with a lot of other machine learning tools out there can really speed up this process and actually get this in the hands of the people that need it. So what this is showing right here is how we can use Looker to define a lot of the metrics, both for the business, for a marketing analyst, but as well as the data scientist. You can have one location for all those metrics, one location where all those connections between the data has already been made. As Joel was saying before, we have all those hundreds or thousands of applications. We don't need the data scientist to go through that exercise all over again and figure all of that out. They can embellish that. They can create metrics that probably only they care about and nobody else does, but they can start with building those metrics from something that already exists in the business itself. Then they can push that right into something like Python or R or a slew of other tools out there that exist that Looker can just push data to and start running those machine learning algorithms. A lot of those can actually lower the bar a little bit for the kind of coding skill set required for these data scientists, or just help them work way faster. Instead of coding everything from scratch, they can just start getting those machine learning algorithms working much more quickly. And then they can pipe that back through a database into Looker and expose that out through a BI tool. Now, on the one hand, that can be as simple as having some kind of dashboard for an end user where they can, just click around and try things out. But it could also mean getting it to where they want to, where they consume the data. So whether that's a Slack alert saying, hey, your customer might be churning soon because some metrics are predicting that, to getting an email or text notification, or going backwards, going from Slack and asking the question using a Slack bot or something like that to get the answer of, hey, what might this marketing campaign look like if I want to send it to this 10,000 users or something like that. So one example of what that could look like inside of kind of a dashboarding tool is something like this, where we, in this example, are predicting a propensity for somebody to buy our product. And now, based on that propensity, we can just determine whether we want to send them an email campaign or not. So we have a few assumptions about how much it might cost to send that campaign, both from just literally the service that sends that, or an impact on our brand, perhaps based on some assumptions that we're making on if we're over spamming somebody with email campaigns and they might just click out of that. So all of those things could be taken into account. Those things could be predicted as well, taking into account assumptions on the lifetime revenue of that customer and things like that, and ultimately calculating an ROI based on that propensity score for those users. So now I can say, hey, let me set a threshold for who I want to send this to. Only those people perhaps that are the most likely to buy, and really just push them over the edge to make sure that they do buy, and we can see what that ROI might look like. Again, over here on this side, we can take a look at how this can be ingested in a variety of different ways. So not just getting the messages in a dashboard like we saw before, but again, like I said, in Slack, text message through Twilio, integrated with Marketo. You can get these insights to pop up in Salesforce itself, or just getting them emailed to you. So again, bringing the data to the users as opposed to forcing the users to come to the data itself. Fantastic. So that pretty much wraps up what I wanted to talk about in terms of data science here. We do have a use case that we want to go over. Joel, if you want to talk a little bit about Glossade for us.
Great, thanks, Marcel. Yeah, I do, because I think that they're really interesting to a marketing audience. I don't know how familiar everyone on the line might be with Glossier. I have 2 teenage daughters, so I'm familiar with Glossier. They're a beauty brand, a cosmetic brand that's primarily sold online. They actually started off as a blog and then started selling beauty products about 6 years ago and have become kind of a phenom, right? Their idea is really around making the customer experience good, making people's life easier, and they're selling products incredibly quickly and incredibly well, and have been a really good example of a growth company online from an online retail e-commerce perspective. But because they're so focused on this use case of cosmetics, of beauty, they really need to constantly monitor their audience, who they're reaching, make sure they're reaching them in the right way, and make sure that they have the data around what their customers are up to at any given time. And that's everybody in the company. And historically, the challenge they've had is that they've been really relying on their data team to answer all their ad hoc questions one after another iteratively, and that hasn't really scaled well for them. But let me give you an example of how Glossier is actually using analytics to make life a little bit better. So their marketing department had been focusing on returns in particular, and what they're finding is that some colors, some shades of some of their cosmetics are returned more frequently than others. And there's a possibility there that the products aren't what the company might want them to be. There might be a flawed product. But for things like cosmetics, for things like beauty products, actually what is one of the big drivers of returns is the color looks different on the web than it would look when you see it in real life. And so what Glossier has been doing is correlating returns with what it appears to be on their website and making sure that their website is more accurate compared to the product itself, and are able to radically reduce who is returning product and how happy their customers are. So that's just a really good example, right? Colors can be hard to determine online, and they're just going to monitor when certain colors or tones are disproportionately returned and tweak the website, change the tone in the graphics, slightly tune how the colors are expressed to make sure it's more effective and people don't return as much, or even add additional information that helps them reduce those types of return behaviors as well. But it's not just kind of getting a better view of customer behavior, which does require, again, the combination of multiple data sources, their return data, their stocking data, their website data, their customer sat data. They're going further beyond that, and they need to come up with new ways of better connecting and identifying customers. Like a lot of online retailers, about 80% of their revenue is driven by about 20% of their audience. So a big component of this is going forward is the identification of that audience and making sure that they're treating them well. And then almost like my personal example from earlier, there's this idea that customer might come to the site to buy for, let's say they're getting married and they would like a whole set of cosmetics, and they might buy 2 or 3 things, let's say a blush and an eyeliner. And Glossier might predictably, using some of these data science tools that Marcel was talking about, suggest to them a relevant lipstick or other materials that they might want as part of their cosmetics package. So that could drive additional upsell, resell, and more revenue overall. And so what Glossier is really doing is taking it from what Glossier has done has taken it from a thing that a few people had access to pieces of relevant data that were doing that data on their desktops in isolation from one another in an ad hoc manner, and turning it into an environment that lets everyone inside Glossier access the data so that they can better interact and connect to their customers, and that's interacting and connecting in every level. The very tactical level of making sure their advertising is impactful that I spoke about at the very beginning of this session, all the way to predictively identifying, if possible, next purchase in a lot of these customers, and then incenting them in some manner to make that purchase as it occurs. So very, very powerful, interesting stuff coming out of Glossier.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, sorry, when we spoke earlier, you had a few questions about it. I figured I'd let you ask them.
Yeah, for sure. So it's really interesting that specific example of finding, the color of the lipstick and how it might look different on the website. Generally speaking, what are some of the insights that Glossier can now find that they couldn't before, in a general example?
Yeah, so good question, right? So one of the big metrics that they're working on is customer lifetime value, right? So that is that identification of which of those customers are really the high value return customers to focus on from a customer experience perspective. And that focus could be in its most rudimentary discounting, but it could also be brand advocacy work with them, and ability to take it from more than just driving more revenue with them, but turning those people into advocators and influencers on part of the Glossier brand, which was born in social media, born online, right? Taking that and turning it into a very powerful tool for the company. And all of that is based on this metric of customer lifetime value. That concept I spoke about the order of purchase, or how things relate to each other from a purchase. What is the first purchase someone usually gets when they come to the Glossier site? Is it a low-cost trial product, and can they both incent them with a specific trial product that they know that they'll be satisfied with, help them choose that first product, provide them with some incentive to do the second order, the third order, the fourth order purchase. And then they also have a challenge of stocking versus purchase. Since Glossier has some pretty strong requirements for their quality control, there's a possibility of a product going viral and really them being out of stock on it. And so one of the things that they're able to do now is start looking at those purchase trends and make some stocking decisions as well as they go through that, tightening up their supply chain, which is not traditionally a thing that marketing is heavily engaged in, but because we're combining data sets from all those different areas, that's something they couldn't do everything with. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, definitely. That's really great. And I guess another question I have is just around who's actually using Looker at Glossier. Is it just marketing? Does marketing get access to non-marketing data? How does that work?
Yeah, so that's a pain I've had in my previous job, which is I would like access to our stocking data, or I'd like access to our supply chain data, and someone says, you're in marketing. Exactly, why would you need that? Right? But I think what's great about Looker is that it serves as that clearinghouse for data for the whole org, if you'd like to use it as such. So yes, in Glossier, the majority of people are using data, and they're using it through Looker or through connected systems. But yeah, marketing has access to sales and inventory data and all of that data that they need in order to be very, very strategic as a partner to their product organizations and as a partner to driving revenue strategically for the company. So yeah, it's not always the case that marketing has access to all that data, but the nice thing about a clearinghouse like Looker is it gives them that power.
Fantastic. I guess one last question I would have is just what does Glossier consider kind of the aha moment with data and Looker, right? What was that moment that got them really excited about using Looker?
So the same moment I had when I joined Looker, and that is I don't have to ask anybody to start finding my own answers for stuff. And so their analyst team was super excited because they were able to do things once using things like Looker blocks, model it so that then us marketing people don't have to hound them, and we can get access to the stuff that we need in a self-service manner, in a way that's like that doesn't require me to be Mr. Super Analyst, but lets me really get to sort of the strategic to answers to the strategic questions I have as a marketing person. And I'm going to cut you off on questions now, Marcel, because I know Brittany has gotten a few from our audience. And so while we answered yours to help them seed that, it's probably time we go over there. So Brittany, I understand that there are some questions that were asked online.
Yep. So we have quite a few questions that have come in from our audience. And our first one is going to come in from Gary. What are some other ideal use cases for data science?
Yeah, that's a good question.
You want to take that one? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so data science is a whole bunch of applications within business, kind of general ones, marketing obviously being the main one, but things like churn analysis, is a really big one. Also used for a lot of kind of in-application things. So how are people using the application? How are people getting stuck? Things like A/B testing is another really common one as well. So I would say kind of those would be the top three ones. I would say marketing, churn analysis, revenue forecasting actually would be another really big one that is used out there for sales. And then, of course, A/B testing and using various versions of an application to see how people are using it overall.
Okay, perfect. So our next question is coming in from Aaron. What is the skill set required to do this kind of predictive analytics?
Yeah, for sure. So predictive analytics and data science really comes in two flavors of skill set. One is basically the coding required. So all the pieces that are needed for getting the data prepared and implementing those machine learning algorithms. So this oftentimes require a little bit of expertise in Python or R or some other similar tool. But then there's the other side of it, which is more the conceptual skills. Things like how to interpret the data, how to interpret the results of the machine learning algorithm, some fundamentals of statistics and understanding kind of how data and bias in a machine learning algorithm or statistical model might impact those results. So again, really having a fine-tuned, nuanced understanding of what things like accuracy means, your regression models, and what do they mean, which is not actually something that's necessarily mathematical or coding related, just has to do with the underlying understanding. Now, that first set of skills, the coding set of skills, there are tools out there that can really lessen the burden on that kind of take care of a lot of that for you. But the other side, that kind of knowledge of understanding and interpreting those results, that's going to be necessary. There's no tool out there that does that for you.
All right, perfect. So our third question is coming in from Alex. Alex would like to know, what tools might you use to get started if you're a beginner in the data science space?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah, for sure. So again, if it's one of those situations where you don't really have any experience doing any kind of coding, the tools out there that allow you to just kind of bypass that are things like Data Robot or Big Squid. These are tools that basically let you just plug and play. You upload some kind of spreadsheet and you can start working away. Obviously, they can connect to big databases and big data sets as well, but you really don't need to know how to code. You just need to know how to interpret the result.
Got it. Okay. So the next one is coming in from Shagun. What are the most popular tools for data science these days?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, the traditional ones are still the biggest ones. Python and R are the two main ones. These days, Python is really taking the lead in terms of popularity, mostly because it just integrates with other things a little bit more nicely than R. And a lot of computer scientists are more used to using Python than R. R was a little bit older of a tool meant for statisticians specifically, but both are still used widely in the industry.
Got it. And from Felipe, once you have a good machine learning model that works, how do I operationalize it and make it easy to access? Can Looker help?
Definitely. I mean, ultimately, from a conceptual level, what you need to make sure is that it's not just something sitting around and collecting dust, right? Whether that means some kind of way of getting it into a tool that somebody else is using, or simply automating things like emails or anything along those lines. Of course, Looker does integrate with a whole slew of tools, things like Marketo, sending out emails, sending Slack messages, embedding in Salesforce, and things like that. So it can help a lot. But really, it's just getting at that concept of how do you make sure that this is getting in the hands of the people that need it, and not just sitting around that somebody needs to come to the data scientist to get that answer.
Yeah, and Marcel, I would add to that just a little bit. We have some pre-built integrations inside Looker with some common existing models that are already out there for some predictive analytics, specifically BigQuery machine learning, some work with Amazon SageMaker and other stuff. So if you're working with Looker, the ability to take existing functional machine learning models and just implement them as part of your data stack is pretty seamless.
Okay. And I think we have time for maybe 2 more questions from Jennifer. Can you elaborate more on how you construct the blocks that Looker uses?
Sure.
Yeah.
So you want to take that one, Marcel? You want me to?
All yours. All yours.
Go for it. Okay, I'll take it. So look, at the core of Looker is a very easy to consume programming language, for lack of a better word, called LookML. It's a modeling language that lets you model common analytic behaviors or paths. So for example, if I have a set of data coming from a source that's got some pretty defined columns, and I know sort of what that data schema looks like, I can model it using LookML, and then that in a centralized repository and use it as an underlighting guide for people who are maybe less technical to explore, modify, and use the data itself. So in Looker, I'm almost like a product manager that's exposing data to many hundreds of users across my company, and I can just very quickly model that data inside Looker. Once it's modeled, however, because it's a very easy to share code-based system, I could copy that model and email it to you in a flat file, or we could use GitHub to share it, or however you'd like to. I can transmit that knowledge that I have of the underlying data or the underlying analytic pattern to you. And because Looker is powerful that way, what has happened is a number of experts have built common analytic patterns and share them for free on our blocks directory. And so you can go online and you can actually Google Looker blocks right now and go see the 100 or so plus blocks that we have available to you, and make your own and share them as well once you're a Looker customer. So it's very easy to share and do it, but underlying all of it is a simple, easy to learn modeling language. And so this is essentially a chunk of modeling language, or a chunk of analytic pattern which has already been defined. So you can stand on the shoulders of giants and use their knowledge instead of having to recreate the wheel. How many of your peers are also doing AdWords data, right? There's no reason for you to go out and try and model that independently. It's a pretty clearly defined schema. We have a block for it. Copy and paste, you're done.
Okay. And our final question is coming in from Kyle. Does Looker have a block for combining sample survey data files?
So the answer here is I don't know, because we have several hundred blocks. But I can't imagine it would be too far off or too hard to actually create one on your own. So unfortunately, I don't have the answer to that, but I could quickly Google and find out if there's one that's pre-built. The creation of one, depending on the format it comes out in, let's say it's landing as a CSV outside of, say, Google Forms, would take a few minutes from an analyst team.
Got it. Perfect. So do either of you have any final comments that you want to leave our audience with today?
Yeah, so Brittany, I did just get pinged on a couple of, just one additional question I think that makes sense for us to answer, and this is around B2B and healthcare industry use cases. So I just want to make sure that we respond to that one here really quickly. I see that Lisa, I think it is, in our question queue. So thanks, Lisa, for that. So we definitely do have a large number of B2B and healthcare industry use cases. B2B is a little bit different from a marketing perspective, obviously, than B2C, but there are many of the similar challenges, which is making sure that you are governing what you're transmitting, you're understanding what you're accepting from customers, combining multiple data sources. In the case of healthcare in particular, There's some strong HIPAA requirements and data privacy requirements, which are very, very important. And all of that is absolutely possible and is done today in Looker. There was another question I think that was sent out earlier around GDPR, and I think that that touches on a lot of the same data privacy concerns that a healthcare use case would have too. In particular, there's some very strong constraints around data privacy that come out of GDPR that Looker is uniquely suited to serving. One of them is this right to be forgotten. When you request, if you're in Europe and you ask a tech company to please remove your data, they have 30 days to remove it from their system. When I was talking earlier about this concept of desktop-based analytics where everybody's got an Excel file or one of those similar systems and is doing kind of their own analytics, if someone asks to remove that data, it is very challenging to assure compliance that actually everyone who might have an extract of data sitting on their desktop does that. Because Looker is centralized and governed, it's really that clearinghouse of data. You can make that change and it will trickle out to everybody who's doing analytics in your org. So Looker's governance really makes a difference from a privacy perspective, makes a difference from an access to data perspective. Because Looker is also very smart about things, you can scrub data sets and other things that are necessary for sharing data in a healthcare environment. And in a B2B environment, oftentimes one of the things you might share with a business partner in a B2B environment would be actually sharing data sets or sharing access to data with your business partners. One of your customers might request your supply chain data or some operational data from you, for example. And with Looker, you can make that very easy through automating data delivery, and you can even do it based on certain thresholds being set. So let's assume that sales go over X number of dollars. Your business partner could have a data set automatically emailed to them or dropped into an S3 bucket for them, or however they want to accept it, without your analysts having to even get involved in that process, except for setting up the scheduled delivery. So a lot of very powerful B2B use cases. But I think when I look at the question, do we have B2B or healthcare industry use cases, it sort of splits down into how do you support working with larger business partners? How do you deal with the questions of privacy, security, and governance? And both of those are really strong suits for Looker. So with that, I think we're probably going to close this session out. Thank you for everyone who joined us. We really appreciate it. Marcel, thank you so much for your expertise in data science. We have a number of resources we encourage you to go look if you want to know more about us or about Looker or about Glossier. You can go right to our website and see a brief video about them as well. And I really encourage anyone who's interested to sign up for a demo and see it in action, because I think Looker is pretty cool and pretty life-changing for the people who are implementing a data culture around a powerful platform like that. So with that, thank you, Brittany. I appreciate it. Thank you, Marcel, and thank you, everyone, for attending. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
All right, perfect. And thank you both, everyone. Let's go ahead and give our speakers a virtual round of applause by saying thank you in the chat box. Just a quick reminder, the presentation will be available on demand. So everyone, please have a great day, and we hope to see you at our next webinar.